Right now, beneath your perfectly manicured lawn, there's a highly active biological war going on.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It really is.
And every time you wash your hands or, clean a sink, you are likely and completely accidentally arming the wrong side.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's the ultimate out of sight, out of mind utility for most people.
Right, but it's this microscopic battleground that, if you ignore it, can suddenly turn into an absolute nightmare for your property, your wallet, and honestly, your local environment.
For decades, the standard homeowner approach has basically just been to expect this massive underground vault to silently process everything we throw at it, usually in the dark with like zero active management.
Which is exactly why the traditional maintenance model is failing so miserably. Welcome to today's deep dive. We're looking at a massive paradigm shift happening in home infrastructure right now.
Such a huge shift, yeah.
We're pulling insights from some really interesting sources today. There's a piece called The Green Wave, Modern Eco-Friendly Septic Maintenance Solutions, and this fascinating article on a new wave of treatments focusing heavily on a product called SEPTIFIX.
Both are essential reads if you own a home.
Totally. Our mission today is to uncover why the classic scorched earth chemical approach to plumbing is actually destroying the very systems we're trying to maintain, and how this completely new wave of eco-friendly biological solutions is changing the game entirely.
The science behind it is surprisingly deep.
I have to admit, I never really thought waste management science would be this compelling, but the microbial engineering happening under the grass is wild. Okay, let's unpack this.
Sounds good.
Before we look at the biological solutions, I feel like we have to understand the mechanics of the destruction first. Like, why has the default approach been so heavily reliant on these harsh chemicals for so long?
I mean, it really comes down to a desire for immediate visible gratification.
Oh, shit.
When you experience a slow drain or, a really foul odor, the human instinct is to reach for a heavy plastic jug of caustic drain cleaner or sulfuric additives or just like concentrated bleach.
Right, you want the problem gone right now.
Exactly. And the chemistry of those traditional products relies on extreme oxidation and processes like saponification. That's where highly caustic lye literally turns fats and grease into soap so they can just wash away.
So it's a very violent reaction.
It is. It generates heat, it burns through organic matter, and it forcefully clears the immediate physical blockage.
So you get this illusion of success, basically. The water goes down the drain, the smell is neutralized by chlorine, and you think, hey, I've solved the problem.
But you've only addressed a symptom. What's fascinating here is that while you're clearing the pipe, you are systematically crippling the underlying machinery of the whole system.
Because it's not just a holding tank, right?
Not at all. A septic tank is a highly sensitive bioreactor. Its entire function relies on a very specific concentration of microbial populations.
Beneficial bacteria, basically.
Yes, beneficial bacteria that actively digest solid waste, liquefy organic matter, and then manage the effluent, the liquid, so it can safely flow out into your drain field.
I was thinking about this while reading the sources. Treating that bioreactor with concentrated bleach or lye is exactly like taking a heavy, broad-spectrum antibiotic for a minor sniffle.
That is a perfect analogy.
Like, you might feel like you're taking decisive action, but you wipe out your entire beneficial gut microbiome in the process. You're left with a temporary fix, but a fundamentally compromised, much weaker system.
And that biological crash inside the tank has immediate mechanical consequences.
How so?
Well, when you pour excessive antibacterial soaps or heavy chemical cleaners down the sink, you're sterilizing an environment that fundamentally requires bacteria to function.
Right.
So without that microbial workforce, the natural decomposition process just grinds to a halt. The solid sludge layer at the bottom of the tank begins to accumulate at a vastly accelerated rate.
Because the microscopic workforce that usually eats that sludge is dead.
Precisely. And as that untreated sludge piles up, it reduces the tank's overall liquid capacity.
Ah, I see where this is going.
Yeah, the effluent, which is supposed to be relatively clear of heavy solids, gets pushed out into your drain field while it's still thick with raw, undigested organic matter.
Yikes.
And over time, those harsh chemical residues, combined with the raw sludge, physically coat the pipes. They clog the biomat in your yard, which is this crucial layer of soil and bacteria that filters the water. By trying to aggressively clean the plumbing, homeowners are basically guaranteeing premature structural failure.
Wait, if the traditional chemical warfare method is just accelerating the death of the system, how is modern science approaching this? The literature talks a lot about a shift toward biological support, essentially rehabilitating that microbial workforce.
Right. The modern approach abandons the idea of chemical sterilization entirely.
Completely.
Instead of pouring corrosives into the bioreactor, the focus is on bioremediation. This means introducing enzyme blends, biodegradable surfactants, and, most importantly, oxygen-releasing compounds.
To optimize the environment for the bacteria naturally equipped to do the heavy lifting.
Exactly.
The oxygen element is what really stood out in literature for me. But to understand why oxygen matters, we have to look at the baseline state of a standard septic vault.
It's important context, yeah.
By design, these tanks operate as anaerobic environments, meaning they function with very little to no oxygen.
Right. Anaerobic bacteria are the default residents of these systems. They are capable of breaking down solid waste, but their metabolic process is incredibly inefficient.
Because they don't have air.
Because they operate without oxygen, yeah. So they rely on fermentation. In terms of cellular energy, anaerobic respiration produces just a fraction of the ATP, the energy currency of the cell, compared to oxygen-rich respiration.
So they're basically sluggish, low-energy workers.
Very sluggish, and their specific metabolic byproducts are highly problematic. As they slowly digest organic matter, they release hydrogen sulfide and methane.
Oh, that hydrogen sulfide. That's what causes that distinct, horrific, rotten egg odor that wafts up from a struggling drain, right?
Yeah.
Or a saturated yard.
Yeah, exactly. It's unmistakable.
Which brings us to the actual intervention. If you can introduce oxygen into that environment, you flip the biological script entirely.
You do. You activate aerobic bacteria, which are an entirely different class of microorganism.
The efficiency multiplier there is staggering.
It really is. Aerobic bacteria can extract roughly 18 to 19 times more energy from the same organic molecules just because they use oxygen to complete the metabolic breakdown.
Wow, 18 times more energy.
Yeah. So they multiply exponentially faster, they consume the solid sludge at a much higher rate, and crucially, their metabolic byproduct is largely odorless carbon dioxide and water.
Rather than hydrogen sulfide.
Exactly. No rotten egg smell.
Okay, so the case study in the literature focuses on a newer generation treatment called SEPTIFIX. It's basically a solid tablet you flush once a month. The claim is that it delivers this oxygen catalyst to the tank.
Yes, that's the core mechanism.
Here's where it gets really interesting, but wait, I'm struggling to picture this. A septic tank is a 1,000-gallon sealed concrete vault buried underground. It is fundamentally designed to be airless.
Yeah.
So if I drop a single palm-sized tablet into a massive underground pool of sludge, how does that actually make a dent in the microbial environment?
It's a great question. It's a matter of targeted chemical reactions, not physical aeration. You aren't hooking up an air compressor to bubble air into the tank.
Okay, so no giant scuba tank for the bacteria.
No. These modern bioremediation tablets typically utilize a solid oxygen-rich compound, something like sodium percarbonate.
Okay.
When that compound makes contact with the wastewater, it undergoes a chemical reaction. It effervesces and releases hydrogen peroxide, which then rapidly breaks down into water and dissolves molecular oxygen.
So it's infusing oxygen directly into the fluid where the bacteria live rather than just like filling the empty airspace at the top of the tank.
Exactly. By raising the dissolved oxygen levels in the specific zone where the tablet rests, you create an aerobic microenvironment.
Oh, I see.
You don't need to hyperoxygenate the entire 1,000 gallons instantly. You create a localized catalyst. The aerobic bacteria in that zone, which were either dormant or really struggling, are suddenly supercharged by the available oxygen.
That makes so much sense.
They multiply rapidly, consume the immediate waste, and as they expand their colony, they significantly accelerate the breakdown of the surrounding sludge. You are literally shifting the balance of power in the tank's ecosystem.
That is brilliant. You're altering the chemical environment at a microscopic level to favor the high-efficiency workers.
That's the goal.
But wait, if this tablet is supercharging the breakdown process and fundamentally changing the chemical makeup of the liquid inside the tank, what happens to that byproduct when it inevitably flows out of the tank and into the drain field?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is where the conversation shifts from private plumbing to public health.
Because it doesn't just stay in the yard.
No, the septic system is not a closed, isolated loop. It is a flow-through system designed to constantly release liquid effluent into the surrounding soil. This process, which is known as percolation, relies on the soil acting as a massive, natural biofilter.
It's basically a direct IV line into the local ecosystem.
It really is.
Yeah.
The environmental stakes of how we treat these tanks are massive. When a homeowner relies on the old chemical method flushing, concentrated bleach, sulfuric acid, all those chemical drain openers, those non-biodegradable compounds don't magically disappear inside the tank.
Right, they have to go somewhere.
They are suspended in the effluent, and they flow directly into the drain field.
Where they hit that biomat we talked about earlier.
Yes, and they decimate the microbial life in the soil just as effectively as they decimated the tank. Once the soil's biomat is destroyed by chemical runoff, the soil pores clog. The effluent can no longer percolate downward.
So it has to go somewhere else. It either backs up into the house, which is awful, or it pushes its way up to the surface of the lawn.
Or, even more dangerously, it channels too quickly through the compromised soil directly into the groundwater table.
Oh, man.
Untreated wastewater carrying raw coliform bacteria, dangerous spikes in nitrates, and toxic chemical residues begins to contaminate local aquifers, nearby streams, and even drinking water wells.
That's a huge public health issue.
High nitrate levels in groundwater can cause massive algae blooms in local lakes and pose severe risks to human health, particularly for infants.
Which is why environmental scientists and civil engineers are so aligned on this shift toward bioremediation. Using a biodegradable, oxygen-releasing catalyst like the ones detailed in the literature isn't just a strategy to avoid a plumbing bill.
No, it's much bigger than that.
It ensures that the effluent leaving the tank is heavily broken down, biologically active, and completely free of caustic chemicals. It protects the soil's natural filtering ability and safeguards the broader community's groundwater.
The financial and environmental incentives are just perfectly aligned here. By optimizing the biology, you protect both the local ecology and your own property value.
So, what does this all mean for the homeowner listening right now? We know the underlying science, and we know the environmental stakes. How do we transition from treating this infrastructure as an out-of-sight, out-of-mind utility to setting up a proactive preventative defense?
This raises an important question, right, Dave? The first step is just understanding the sheer cost of ignoring the biology.
It's not cheap.
The literature notes that while emergency pumping might cost a few $100s, replacing a fully failed, chemically scorched drain field is an entirely different tier of expense. You are routinely looking at $15,000 to $20,000 for the excavation, soil replacement, and new piping.
Wait, really? $20,000?
Easily.
Not to mention tearing up your landscaping, potential professional sanitation cleanups for surface spills, and the reality of your home being temporarily uninhabitable if the plumbing is completely offline.
Which makes early detection crucial. You have to monitor the system for hydrostatic pressure changes and biological imbalances.
What should people be looking out for?
Persistent sewage odors outdoors or near ground-level drains are obvious indicators that the anaerobic bacteria are overwhelmed and the sludge is backing up.
You also want to listen to your plumbing, right?
Right.
If you hear a distinct gurgling sound when you flush a toilet or drain a bathtub, that is a major red flag.
Very true.
It means the effluent cannot flow freely into the tank, causing air to get trapped and forced backward through the water traps in your pipes.
Exactly. And this also raises an important question about visual indicators outside the house, particularly the unusually green grass phenomenon.
Yes, I wanted to ask about that.
Many homeowners notice a distinctly lush, vibrant, perfectly rectangular patch of grass growing over their drain field in the middle of summer. They assume their lawn is just thriving.
When in reality, that grass is on steroids for all the wrong reasons.
It is a symptom of structural failure masquerading as a landscaping victory.
That's wild.
When a tank fails to properly digest waste, often due to that chemical sterilization we talked about, the effluent that flows into the yard is heavily saturated with raw nitrogen and phosphorus.
Raw fertilizer, basically.
Yeah. If the soil's biomat is clogged, that nutrient-heavy wastewater doesn't percolate deeply into the earth. It wicks upward toward the surface roots. The grass absorbs that raw, untreated fertilizer and grows incredibly fast. It is a glaring warning sign that raw sewage is sitting just inches below the surface.
Oh, gross. To stop that from happening, the daily habits inside the house have to change. If the goal is to protect the microbial workforce, the first line of defense is moderating what goes down the drain.
Absolutely.
You don't have to live in the dark ages, obviously, but heavy, continuous use of antibacterial soaps and concentrated cleaners is completely counterproductive.
And water flow management is equally critical. A septic tank needs retention time.
Like time to process.
Right, the bacteria require time to actually digest the incoming waste. If a household does, say, 6 heavy loads of laundry in a single afternoon, the sheer volume of water flushes the tank too quickly.
It's just pushing it all out.
Yeah, pushing semi-digested solids out into the drain field before the bacteria have finished their work.
And then there is the absolute golden rule, which still gets ignored constantly. Never flush non-biodegradable materials.
Don't.
The literature is extremely clear on this. Even products heavily marketed as flushable wipes are disastrous for these systems.
They do not break down in the microbial environment. They tangle with fats and grease, creating massive physical blockages that no amount of bacteria can process.
They just sit there.
Yep. Wipes, paper towels, heavy cooking grease, and feminine hygiene products should never enter the bioreactor.
So when you combine those daily behavioral shifts with a targeted biological intervention like introducing a monthly oxygenating compound like SEPTIFIX, you create a highly resilient system.
You do.
You ensure the aerobic bacteria always have the catalyst they need to outpace the incoming waste, preventing the sludge buildup that leads to catastrophic failure.
It is entirely about transitioning from chemical combat to biological partnership.
We've covered a tremendous amount of ground today. We've looked at the hidden dangers of the traditional chemical approach, where caustic lye and bleach might clear a temporary clog but ultimately sterilize the crucial microbial workforce, leading to sludge accumulation and destroyed grain fields.
And we explored the mechanics of the oxygen revolution,
Yes.
detailing how bioremediation tablets utilize compounds like sodium bicarbonate to release dissolved oxygen, shifting the tank from a slow, odor-producing anaerobic environment to a hyper-efficient aerobic engine.
And we connected that internal efficiency to the massive external stakes, seeing how a healthy, biologically active tank protects soil percolation and prevents toxic nitrates and pathogens from contaminating local groundwater. It is a really clear reminder that our modern infrastructure is deeply intertwined with the natural world.
Understanding that micro-level biology is honestly the key to preventing macro-level engineering disasters.
It really is. And the literature makes it undeniably clear that these complex waste systems function at their absolute peak when we actively support their natural biological balance, rather than trying to aggressively sanitize them into submission.
Absolutely.
Which leaves me with a final thought for you to mull over today. If we are finally learning that our home's infrastructure works infinitely better when we stop fighting nature and start supplying its microscopic ecosystems with the tools they need to thrive, I mean, it makes you wonder. What other systems in our daily lives, from industrial agriculture and soil management to the actual microbiome in our own digestive tracts, are we currently trying to violently control with heavy synthetic chemicals? And how much better off would we be if we just stepped back, provided a little biological support, and let nature's invisible workforce do what it does best?
It really changes the way you look at every bottle of cleaner or chemical under the sink.
Absolutely does. Think about that the next time you glance out at the grass in your backyard. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you walk away with a deeper understanding of the science beneath your feet. Take care.